My name is Ava Petrov, and my world was built on the bedrock of details. As an event planner, I lived in a universe of color swatches, seating charts, and perfectly timed moments. My own wedding was to be my masterpiece, a symphony of blush peonies, string quartets, and artisanal cocktails, all meticulously designed to celebrate my love for my fiancé, Liam Marshall. For a year, every detail was a testament to the future I was so certain of, a future where every piece fit perfectly. By my side for every decision, every triumph and minor panic, was Jessica Davies, my maid of honor. Our friendship was the one detail in my life I never had to plan. It was a given, a constant since we'd shared secrets and skinned our knees in kindergarten. She was more sister than friend, the keeper of my history and the designated cheerleader for my future. The betrayal, when it came, was not a detail I had overlooked. It was a wrecking ball that demolished the entire structure of my life. It happened 1 week before the wedding. I was at the home Liam and I already shared, using his tablet to confirm a final detail with our florist. A string of messages popped up on the screen, the banner showing Jessica's smiling profile picture. I wasn't snooping, but the words were impossible to ignore. "Is she still babbling about the ice sculpture?" one message read. "God, I can't wait until this is over and we don't have to pretend to care anymore." My heart seized. I opened the thread, my fingers trembling. It was a conversation stretching back months. They weren't just having an affair, they were conducting a long-form mockery of my entire existence. They ridiculed my passion for my work, my taste in music, my relationship with my parents. And then I saw the lines that burned everything to the ground. "Just one more week of playing the dutiful fiancé," Liam had written. "Once the papers are signed and I'm a partner in Petrov Enterprises, we can be done with this whole charade." Jessica had replied with a string of laughing emojis. "Just make sure you perform well on the wedding night. Don't want her getting suspicious before your name is on the letterhead." I sat there in the sunlit perfection of our living room, the world dissolving into a silent, screaming void. The betrayal was so absolute, so profoundly cruel, it was a physical sensation, a chemical burn in my veins. They had not just broken my heart. They had taken my love, my trust, and my friendship and used them as tools in a cold, calculated business transaction. The tears I expected never came. Instead, a terrifying, crystalline calm settled over me. The event planner in my mind, the woman who managed chaos for a living, took over. I would not cancel the $100,000 wedding. I would not give them the quiet, private satisfaction of a broken engagement. They wanted a show. I would give them a masterpiece of a performance, with a final act they would never see coming. The week that followed was the most difficult performance of my life. I became the ultimate actress, playing the part of the radiant, excited bride-to-be, all while my heart was a hollowed-out cavern of rage and grief. Every interaction was a new layer of torture. There was the final dress fitting, where Jessica had feigned tears, telling me I was the most beautiful bride she had ever seen. I had hugged her, the scent of her familiar perfume making my stomach churn, and whispered, "I couldn't do this without you," the words tasting like poison on my tongue. The rehearsal dinner was a masterclass in deception. I sat between Liam and Jessica, linking my arms with theirs for photos, my smile a perfect, polished mask. My father, Nikolai Petrov, a man who saw the world in black and white and loved with a fierce, protective intensity, gave a toast. "To Liam," he said, raising his glass, his eyes shining with pride. "I couldn't have chosen a better man for my daughter. Welcome to the family, son." Liam had stood and kissed me, the applause of our closest friends and family washing over us. I had met his gaze, and for a terrifying second I thought my mask would crack. In his eyes I saw not love but a smug, triumphant glint. He thought he had won. He had no idea the game had just changed. My only confidant in this waking nightmare was my younger brother, Alex Petrov. He was a tech genius, a quiet, observant soul who had always been more comfortable with code than with people. He had never fully trusted Liam, a sentiment I had once dismissed as sibling protectiveness. I called him the night I discovered the messages, my voice a flat, emotionless monotone as I recounted what I had found. His silence on the other end of the line was heavy, but it was the silence of a gears turning, not of shock. "What are you going to do, Ava?" he asked, his voice low and serious. "I'm not canceling," I said. "I'm exposing them in front of everyone, but I need your help." That was the night the plan was truly born. I remembered the state-of-the-art security system my father had insisted on installing throughout our family's estate. including the small, private guest house where Liam often stayed when he was working late. The system's footage was stored on a secure, encrypted server. "Alex," I said, a cold, hard idea taking shape, "can you get access to the guest house security footage from the last few months?" "For you," he replied, a dangerous edge to his voice. "I can get access to NORAD. Consider it done." The next day, Alex came to my house with a laptop. "You're not going to like this," he warned before he pressed play. It was worse than I could have imagined. Hours of footage, time-stamped, showing Liam and Jessica in a series of passionate, clandestine encounters, all taking place in a house paid for by my family. They were laughing, kissing, living a secret life right under my nose. It was sickening, irrefutable proof. We sat in silence for a long time after the video ended. Then Alex turned to me. "What's the plan?" "At the reception," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "there's a slideshow. Happy memories of me and Liam. I want you to replace it." Alex looked from the damning footage on his screen to my face, and a slow, grim smile spread across his lips. "Oh," he said, "this is going to be so much better than just canceling." Crafting the instrument of my revenge was a painful, meticulous process. For 2 nights, Alex and I locked ourselves in his home office, a high-tech cave filled with monitors and servers. The task was twofold: to create a video that was both emotionally devastating and legally airtight, and to ensure the technical execution at the reception would be flawless. Watching the footage again was agonizing, but this time, we watched it as directors, not as victims. We selected the most damning clips: a passionate kiss on the guest house porch just hours after I had left for a work trip, an intimate embrace on the sofa the night he claimed to be sick with the flu. Each clip was a nail in their coffin, but the true genius of the plan was Alex's. "The video is good," he said, staring intently at the screen. "But people could dismiss it. He was drunk." She was comforting him. "We need to remove all doubt. We need their own words." He pulled up the screenshots I had taken of the text messages. With a few keystrokes and the kind of software wizardry I couldn't begin to comprehend, he began to overlay the texts onto the video. The result was a masterpiece of humiliation. As the footage showed Liam and Jessica kissing, Liam's text would appear on the screen in a stark, white font. "Just one more week of playing the dutiful fiancé." As they laughed together on the sofa, Jessica's reply would fade in. "God, I can't wait until this is over and we don't have to pretend to care anymore." He even synced specific messages to specific dates, creating a perfect, horrifying timeline of their deceit. It was a digital tapestry of their treachery, woven from their own words and actions. The final video was 5 minutes long. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life. "Now for the delivery system," Alex said, his focus shifting. "The reception slideshow is being run from a laptop provided by the wedding DJ. I've already spoken to him. I told him the family wanted to add a surprise video for the happy couple and that I would be providing a special laptop to ensure high-resolution playback. He was more than happy to oblige for an extra $500. Alex held up a sleek, silver laptop. "This machine is a Trojan horse. It will play the first 90 seconds of the real slideshow, happy photos of you and this monster, to set the scene. Then, on my signal from a small remote in my pocket, it will seamlessly switch to our little movie. After it's done, the screen will just go black. The DJ will think it's a technical glitch." The plan was perfect. It was cold, calculated, and utterly devastating. A part of me, the old Ava who believed in love and happy endings, was horrified by the person I was becoming. But that Ava had died on the living room floor a week ago. The new Ava, the one forged in the fires of betrayal, knew that this was not just revenge. It was justice. It was a controlled demolition of a life built on lies, and I was holding the detonator. The wedding day dawned bright and painfully beautiful. The sky was a perfect, cloudless blue, a mocking backdrop to the storm raging inside me. The bridal suite was a flurry of activity, a cloud of hairspray and champagne-fueled laughter. Jessica was there, of course, playing the part of the doting maid of honor to perfection. She helped me into my gown, her hands adjusting the delicate lace, her touch making my skin crawl. "You are breathtaking, Ava," she whispered, her eyes shining with what I knew now were crocodile tears. "Liam is going to lose his mind when he sees you." "I hope so," I replied, meeting her gaze in the mirror, my expression a carefully constructed mask of bridal joy. The ceremony itself was a surreal, out-of-body experience. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, the faces of our 200 guests a blur of smiling faces. My father, his eyes filled with tears of pride, kissed my cheek and placed my hand in Liam's. As I stood at the altar, looking into the eyes of the man I had once loved, I felt not a flicker of that old affection. I saw only the lies, the greed, the calculated cruelty from his texts. When the officiant asked if I, Ava, took Liam to be my husband, a profound silence fell over the church. For a single, terrifying beat, I thought I wouldn't be able to say the words. But then I thought of the video. I thought of the justice that was waiting. I smiled, a brilliant, radiant smile, and said, "I do." The reception was held in a grand ballroom, transformed by my own design into an enchanted forest of twinkling lights and cascading flowers. Everything was perfect. The food was exquisite, the music was flawless, and the champagne flowed freely. I danced the first dance with Liam, my head on his shoulder, his arms around my waist, the picture of bridal bliss. He whispered in my ear how much he loved me, how he was the luckiest man in the world. It took every ounce of my self-control not to recoil. I even shared a dance with my father, a moment that almost broke me. "You are my whole world, Avi," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so happy you found a man who deserves you." I hugged him tightly, burying my face in his shoulder to hide the single tear that escaped my eye. It was a tear not of sadness, but of guilt for the pain I was about to cause this good, loving man who deserved none of this. But it was a necessary pain, a necessary truth. Finally, the moment arrived. The DJ announced that it was time for a special slideshow presentation, celebrating the couple's journey. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. I took my place at the head table, my hand in Liam's, my heart a cold, steady drum. I glanced over at my brother, who was standing discreetly near the back of the room. He met my eyes and gave me a single, almost imperceptible nod. The show was about to begin. The first few photos on the massive screens were exactly what everyone expected. There was a picture of Liam and me on our first date, awkward and smiling. A shot from a vacation in Italy, kissing in front of the Colosseum. A candid of us laughing on a park bench. The gentle acoustic music swelled and the room was filled with soft, appreciative sighs. My parents were beaming, their faces illuminated by the glow of the screen. Liam squeezed my hand, leaning in to whisper, "Look at us. Perfect." Perfect setup. The perfect lie. Then, just as a photo of our official engagement appeared, the screen flickered. The acoustic guitar was abruptly cut off, replaced by a dead, ringing silence. The screen went black for a single second, and then a new image appeared. It was the stark, black-and-white view from a security camera, the time and date displayed in the bottom corner. The location stamp read, Guest House, EXD, Porch. A confused murmur rippled through the ballroom. Liam's hand tensed in mine. Jessica, at the table next to us, sat bolt upright, her smile frozen on her face. The video began to play. It showed Liam on the guest house porch, pulling Jessica into a passionate, desperate kiss. It was from a month ago, the night he was supposed to be at a charity dinner. Then, as if a ghost were typing on the screen, a text message faded in over their embrace. "Liam, I can't stop thinking about you. Tonight was amazing." The collective gasp from 200 guests was a physical force, a wave of shock that washed over the room. The video cut to a new scene. Liam and Jessica inside the guest house, on the sofa, laughing, their limbs intertwined. "Jessica, she has no idea. It's almost too easy." The text message hung there, superimposed over her smiling face. Another cut. This time they were in the kitchen, him sneaking up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Just one more week of playing the dutiful fiancé. Once the papers are signed and I'm a partner in Petrov Enterprises, we can be done with this whole charade." The room was now utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. I could feel the heat radiating from Liam beside me. His face was a mask of chalky, horrified disbelief. Across the room, I saw Jessica, her face ashen, her eyes wide with panic. I saw her parents, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning shame. And I saw my own parents. My mother's hand was covering her mouth, her eyes filled with tears of shock. My father was no longer looking at the screen. He was looking at Liam, and his expression was one of such cold, murderous fury that it made my blood run cold. The 5-minute video played out in its entirety, a silent, brutal film of their affair, each scene punctuated by their own damning words. When it finished, the screens went black. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. And into that silence, I stood up, picked up the microphone from the lectern, and spoke. My voice, when it came out, was calm and clear, utterly devoid of the tremor I had feared. It cut through the suffocating silence of the ballroom with the precision of a scalpel. I didn't look at Liam or Jessica. Not yet. I looked directly at my parents. "To my beautiful mother and my incredible father," I began, my voice steady. "I am so sorry to have to do this in front of all our friends and family. But I could not enter into a marriage or a business partnership based on such a profound and calculated lie." My father, Nikolai, stood up, his eyes never leaving Liam's face. My mother was now openly weeping, being comforted by her sister. "Now you all know the truth," I said, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces of our guests. "The truth of the man you were about to welcome into our family, and the truth of the woman I have called my best friend since kindergarten." Finally, I turned. I looked at the two of them, sitting frozen in their seats at the head table, trapped in the harsh glare of the spotlight. Liam's face was a mess of sweat and panic. Jessica looked like she was about to be physically ill. They were no longer the smug, confident conspirators from the text messages. They were just small, pathetic, and exposed. "The wedding is off," I stated, the words clean and final. Then I gave them one last, parting gift. I looked at the ruin of our $100,000 reception, at the uneaten cake, the wilting flowers, the horrified guests. "And you too," I said, my voice dropping to a cool, dismissive tone. "You can pay for the party." I placed the microphone carefully back on the lectern. I did not run. I did not cry. I straightened my shoulders, lifted the train of my ridiculously expensive wedding gown, and I walked. I walked past the head table, past my shocked and grieving parents, past the whispering, staring guests, and out of the grand ballroom doors. My brother Alex was waiting for me in the hallway. He had a simple black coat for me and had my car keys in his hand. He wrapped the coat around my shoulders, covering the white lace of my dress. He didn't say a word. He just put his arm around me, and we walked out of the hotel, leaving the wreckage of my old life behind us. As we stepped out into the cool night air, the sounds from the ballroom began to erupt behind us, shouting, crying, the unmistakable, terrifying roar of my father's voice. I didn't turn back. The show was over, and I had been the one to bring down the curtain. The immediate aftermath was a chaotic explosion I was thankfully shielded from. Alex drove me to our family's quiet lake house, a sanctuary an hour away from the city. My phone was buzzing incessantly, a frantic chorus of calls and texts, but I turned it off and handed it to Alex. "No one talks to you but me, Mom, and Dad for the next 24 hours, he said, his voice firm with a protectiveness I had never seen in him before. He made me tea and we sat in the quiet living room, the only sound the crackling of a fire he had built. He told me later what had happened after we left. My father, a man of formidable presence and zero tolerance for betrayal, had descended upon Liam. It hadn't been violent, but it had been something far more terrifying. He had calmly informed Liam that he would be hearing from his lawyers regarding the recovery of every cent spent on the wedding, and that if Liam ever came near our family or our business again, he would employ his considerable resources to ensure he would never work in the city again. Liam's parents, utterly humiliated, had reportedly dragged him from the ballroom. Jessica's fate was just as swift. Her own parents, decent people mortified by their daughter's actions, had confronted her. The scene had been ugly, filled with tears and recriminations. They had left the reception in disgrace. The guests had dissipated quickly, leaving the beautiful, tragic ballroom empty save for the bewildered staff and two families torn apart by greed and deceit. My parents arrived at the lake house near dawn. My mother wrapped me in her arms, and it was only then, in the safety of her embrace, that the tears finally came. They were not tears for Liam or Jessica, but tears of grief for the beautiful dream that had been a lie, and tears of relief that the performance was over. My father hugged me, his grip tight. "I am so proud of you, Avi," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are stronger than I ever knew. You are a Petrov. We do not tolerate betrayal." The days that followed were a blur of legal calls and quiet healing. My father was true to his word. A formidable legal team descended on Liam and Jessica, presenting them with a meticulously itemized bill for the entire wedding, citing breach of contract and emotional distress. The social fall out for them was immediate and brutal. They became pariahs. Liam was fired from his job, his reputation in the business community shredded. Jessica, ostracized from our lifelong circle of friends, deleted her social media, and I heard, eventually moved to a different city to escape the shame. I never spoke to either of them again. There was nothing left to say. My revenge was complete, but it was not a joyful victory. It was a necessary, painful amputation. I had cut the diseased parts of my life away, and now I had to learn to live with the scars. The healing process was not linear. There were days I woke up feeling powerful and free, and days I was blindsided by a wave of grief for the friendship I had lost with Jessica. The romantic betrayal was almost easier to process. Liam's motives were base and transactional, but Jessica's betrayal cut deeper. She had been my sister in all but blood, and her actions felt like a repudiation of our entire shared history. I spent a lot of time at the lake house, walking by the water, reading, and slowly, carefully, reassembling the pieces of myself. I threw myself back into my work, finding solace in the familiar logic of planning and execution. My first event after the wedding was a high-profile charity gala. The client, aware of what had happened, was incredibly supportive. On the night of the gala, as I watched the flawlessly executed event unfold, I felt a flicker of my old self return. I was good at this. I could create beauty and order out of chaos. That was my talent, and no one could take that from me. The story of my wedding became a piece of whispered local legend. I was the runaway bride who had staged a coup at her own reception. Some saw me as a hero, a symbol of female empowerment. Others, I'm sure, saw me as vengeful and overly dramatic. I learned to be indifferent to their opinions. The only people whose opinions mattered were the ones who had sat with me by the fire at the lake house, who had seen my pain and supported my path to justice. I legally dissolved my engagement and began the quiet work of building a new life, one that was not defined by a relationship, but by my own strength and integrity. My father, seeing my renewed focus and resilience, offered me a new opportunity. He was launching a new division of Petrov Enterprises focused on corporate and luxury events, and he wanted me to run it. "It's time you built your own empire, Avi," he said. "Not as someone's wife, but as your own woman." It was the greatest gift he could have given me, not just a job, but a vote of confidence in my future, a future I would now build on my own terms. The Petrov Events division became my new passion. I poured all the energy I had once put into wedding planning into creating a company that was the epitome of style, innovation, and flawless execution. My reputation, once the subject of gossip, was now defined by my professionalism and creativity. I built a team of talented, loyal people, and together we made a name for ourselves. The work was demanding, but it was honest. The success was mine, earned through my own vision and hard work. About a year after the wedding that wasn't, I was overseeing an event at the very same hotel where my reception had taken place. As I stood in the grand ballroom, now transformed for a different client, a different celebration, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The ghosts of that night were gone. The room was no longer a stage for my pain. It was just a space, one that I now commanded with confidence. A young woman on my staff, new to the team, came up to me. "You're Ava Petrov, right?" She asked, a little starstruck. "I've heard stories about you. You're a legend." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "I'm just an event planner," I said. "Now, let's make sure the lighting cues for the keynote speaker are perfect." The legend was a part of my story, but it did not define me. My work defined me. My resilience defined me. I had taken the ugliest, most painful event of my life and had refused to be its victim. I had become its narrator, its director. I had taken control of the story. I never saw Liam again. I heard he eventually found work in another state, a shadow of the ambitious man he had once been. Jessica sent me a long, rambling letter of apology 6 months after the wedding. I read the first few lines, felt nothing, and threw it in the fire at the lake house. Some things cannot be fixed. Some betrayals are absolute. My life moved forward. I found a new, quieter kind of happiness. A happiness that was not dependent on a perfect wedding or a fairy tale romance, but on my own strength, the love of my family, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. I had learned the hard way that the most important event you will ever plan is your own life, and I was now the sole, undisputed author of the guest list. The years that followed were a testament to the power of rebuilding. Petrov Events became a leader in the industry, my aim synonymous with excellence. The story of my wedding faded from a scandalous headline to a foundational myth, a story I would sometimes tell to young women I mentored, not as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson in self-worth and the importance of trusting your instincts. I learned that the end of a great love and a great friendship is not the end of the world. It is, instead, an opportunity to discover the depth of your own love for yourself. My relationship with my family, already strong, was forged into something unbreakable by the crisis we had weathered together. My brother Alex and I remained incredibly close, partners in business and in life, our bond cemented by the secret we had shared and the justice we had delivered. One day, Alex and I were having lunch, and he asked me if I ever thought about that day. Sometimes, I admitted. I think about the person I was, the girl who needed everything to be perfect. She was a good person, Alex said quietly. She just trusted the wrong people. I know, I said, but the woman who walked out of that ballroom, I like her better. She's not afraid of things being messy. She knows she can survive a wrecking ball. That was the true victory. It wasn't the look on their faces when the video played. It was the quiet, unshakable knowledge of my own resilience. I had faced the ultimate betrayal and had not only survived, but had thrived. I had turned my greatest heartbreak into my greatest strength. The details of my life were different now. My color palette was bolder. My seating charts were more exclusive, and my moments were timed not for a grand, public spectacle of love, but for the quiet, profound satisfaction of a life lived with integrity and courage. I had planned the perfect revenge, but the unexpected, beautiful result was that I had also planned the perfect life for myself, one built on a foundation that no one could ever shatter. My story became an internal compass, guiding my decisions in both business and life. I became adept at spotting insincerity, at recognizing the subtle dissonances between what people said and what they did. The painful lesson had honed my instincts into a sharp, reliable tool. This made me a formidable negotiator and a leader my team trusted implicitly. They knew I valued honesty and integrity above all else. I didn't date for a long time. The thought of extending that kind of trust to someone new was daunting. But eventually, I met a man, an architect named Ben, who was the antithesis of Liam. He was quiet, brilliant, and his actions always spoke louder than his words. He knew my story, most people in my circle did, and he was never intimidated by it. He was attracted to the strength it had revealed. Our relationship was not a whirlwind romance. It was a slow, deliberate construction, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and a comfortable, easy honesty. Our wedding, when it happened 5 years later, was the polar opposite of my first. We had 30 guests at the lake house. I wore a simple, elegant dress. We wrote our own vows, and there was no slideshow. The only performance was the genuine, unscripted joy of two people who had found a true and honest love. My father, in his toast, looked at me with tears in his eyes. "To Ava," he said, "who taught us all that a broken plan can lead to a more beautiful destination." It was a perfect summary of my journey. The meticulously planned life I had dreamed of had been a mirage. The real, substantial, and deeply happy life I now had was one I could never have planned, one that had to be built from the wreckage of a spectacular disaster. And it was so much better. The memory of Liam and Jessica faded to a dull, gray monochrome. They were characters from a previous chapter, their power to inflict pain long gone. Their story had a predictable, sad trajectory. Their affair, born of deceit and convenience, did not survive the harsh light of public disgrace. They had been partners in a crime, and once the crime was exposed, they had nothing left to bind them together but shared shame. They went their separate ways, their grand plans for my family's money turning to dust. Their punishment was not the financial bill for the wedding, though my father did, in fact, make them pay a significant settlement. Their true punishment was having to live with the consequences of their own character. I, on the other hand, was living with the rewards of mine. The strength I had shown had not just saved me, it had defined me. It had given me a story, a purpose, and a profound appreciation for the simple, unshakable value of truth. In the end, I had given them exactly what they deserved. And in the process, I had given myself something I never knew I needed, the chance to become the hero of my own story. The final, quiet irony of my story is that, as an event planner, my job is to create perfect moments for other people. I orchestrate their happiness, ensuring every detail aligns. To create a flawless memory, my own perfect moment had been a catastrophe, a meticulously planned disaster. And yet, It was the most important and defining event of my life. It taught me that life is not about avoiding the storms or scripting the perfect day. It's about how you navigate the wreckage when the storm hits. It's about having the courage to tear down a beautiful facade to expose a rotten foundation. I still create perfect moments for my clients. But I no longer strive for perfection in my own life. I strive for authenticity. I strive for resilience. I strive for a happiness that is not for show, but for real. And that is a lesson that no amount of planning can teach you. It's a lesson you can only learn in the fire. My fire had been a spectacular one, and I had walked out of it, not just unscathed, but forged anew. My name is Ava Petrov, and I once planned the perfect wedding. It was a masterpiece of illusion. The greatest event I ever truly planned, however, was the one that followed, the demolition of a lie and the beautiful, messy, and authentic construction of a life worth living. And that is a story with a truly happy ending. The legacy of that day was not one of revenge, but of authenticity. In business, my brand became synonymous with integrity. Clients knew that with Petrov events, what they saw was what they got. There were no hidden clauses, no false promises. This reputation, born from a moment of brutal honesty, became my most valuable asset. In my personal life, the lesson was the same. I built relationships on a foundation of truth, and I taught my future children the importance of character over appearance. The spectacular collapse of my first wedding became a family story, not of a salacious scandal, but of our fiercest values in action. It was a story about loyalty, about courage, and about the fact that the Petrovs do not, under any circumstances, tolerate betrayal. And that was a legacy far more valuable than any business partnership Liam could have ever dreamed of. In the quiet moments, I sometimes trace the path of my life. The straight, predictable line I had planned for myself, and the wild, unexpected trajectory it had taken instead. The betrayal had felt like a dead end, a catastrophic failure. But it was, in fact, a violent, necessary course correction. It had shaken me from a complacent dream and forced me onto a path that was rockier, but infinitely more rewarding. It had led me to a truer love, a stronger sense of self, and a deeper understanding of the world. Liam and Jessica had thought they were plotting to take my future. In reality, they had only succeeded in giving me a better one. And for that, in the strangest, most ironic way possible, I could almost be grateful.